We are joined with Dr. Wilmer Leon. He's a political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, and host on shows on Sirius XM. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right? Can you hear me? You may have your mute up. Oh, there you are. There you are. No worries. No worries.
Sorry about that.
How you doing this morning? You doing all right?
Man, other than being lost and confused, I'm doing great. What's happening?
That's okay. You're not that lost.
I thought I had a couple more minutes. Anyway,
well, you did have a couple more minutes, but my previous guest blew me off.
What?
Yeah, I wasn't important enough for him to show up. Apparently,
no, man. We're gonna show up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I'm sorry. No, we're gonna roll up.
Roll up.
We're gonna roll up on.
I'm so happy you can join me.
Sure,
I asked you yesterday, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? And you said Syria. And I'm glad you mentioned that.
Time out. No, I got a bigger one than that now.
Go for it.
Okay. When is a deal not a deal?
When it is made.
When is an offer not an offer? The answer, when the conditions are diametrically opposed to reality. Zelensky signals. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Did you talk about this already?
Yeah, I did. Well, basically, Zelensky floating this ridiculous, unworkable, nonsense plan that he's going to exchange NATO membership for territory. And I pointed out before, I said, this is nonsense.
No, wait a minute. No. From what I read, what he's saying is, I will concede the territory.
Right. For ceasefire. Well, pause.
For NATO membership.
Right. And I pointed out that's nonsense. The entire point of this war.
That's what started the whole damn fight.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the other part of that was him saying, but we're not going to recognize Russia's claim on that territory. And we're going to try to get it diplomatically. So it's like, okay, so you want to join NATO, you want to rebuild your military with the backing of NATO as you do so. And I would imagine that there would be some provocation, as some kind of either false flag or something else that would at that point allow this notion of enacting Article 5. Like this is the non-starter.
Doesn't this sound like the Minsk agreements?
It does.
It sounds like so, we can talk about this in the Biden pardon, because I the same story applies here. This is my parents going on vacation. And when I was in high school, and my dad left some beer in the refrigerator, and my buddies come over and we drink the beer. My dad comes home, they come home early from vacation, so I haven't had a chance to replace it. And my dad says, what happened to my beer? And I give him some story. I can't remember whether it was Martians drank it.
Was it Martians?
The Martians, Dad, you should have been here, man. And so he looks at me and he says, oh, so I'm stupid. Oh, so now you're telling me I'm stupid. That angered him more than drinking the beer.
Right.
Oh, so now you want to play me like I'm stupid. Zelensky, you're trying to play me like I'm stupid. Joe Biden, you're trying to play me like I'm stupid. That angers me more. So anyway, I just had to get that out there. I had to get that one off my chest.
Look, man, I feel you on this. I've been, before you got on, I was laughing at Whoopi Goldberg, telling her to come back to the light. Because Whoopi Goldberg was making this argument. Well, it's not really a lie, because he was a crackhead. And Donald Trump was convicted of crimes, and he wasn't a crackhead. And so we should look at this differently. I'm to the point where I don't even think it's a lie anymore. And it's like, okay, this is absurd. It was really your argument.
Can people stop comparing things and other people to Donald Trump? Please.
Right.
Can that, well, Kamala Harris did this and Donald Trump did that. And so it's okay for Kamala, but no. So to that point, I've been making the point, as you know, Kamala offered no policy. Right. And that was one of the reasons why she got her hind parts kicked. Well, Donald Trump didn't offer any policy either. But he didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because the people he was talking to, his base, didn't need him to.
Right.
She needed to articulate policy because the people whose votes she was trying to coerce needed to hear policy.
Yes.
People, whoopee, stop it. Stop comparing reality to idiocy.
Right.
Because Donald Trump is an idiot. Please, we can't have we devolved to such a point to where idiocy is now the comparative norm?
Yes, obviously.
Damn.
Yeah. Joy Ann Reid came out and said people shouldn't be blindsided if people who voted for Trump get disavowed by their families, that they don't get invited to eat tofurkey on Thanksgiving because they voted for Trump, and so now they could no longer be trusted. Like, this is the stuff that's coming out of Democrats. I mean, that stuff is outrageous. That sounds so cultish. Like, anytime where you find, let's say if you were dating an abusive boyfriend or abusive girlfriend, one of the things that they do as a textbook is isolate you from your family. This is what cults do, isolate you from your family. And so when she's telling people, hey, it's okay to not be around your family who may have voted for Trump. And I thought to myself, so if I've known my family, my uncle, for 40 years of life, if he voted for Trump, I'm supposed to disown him and not trust him? Like, this stuff is outrageous. But that's what's coming out. They can't deal with why they lost. And so all of this other ancillary stuff gets thrown into the water. I'm curious. No,
go
please.
ahead. No. You're well. Just another data point on that. I was listening to Simone Sanders this morning.
Was interesting. That was interesting.
And this is after listening to Hakeem Jeffries on Meet the Press 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, but I think it was 2. These Democrats are tripping. They are finding they are blaming Martians. The same way the same Martians that drank my father's beer are the same Martians that stole this election from Kamala.
Wow.
She said everything but we ran from our base. We didn't listen to the base. We offered people nothing.
Right.
They should be focused on 2026. They should be saying right now, look, we blew it. We hear you. We understand what you want. And this is what we're going to offer going forward.
Therein lies the rub. Do you remember Nancy? I was going to say, do you remember when Nancy Pelosi, I think this was when Donald Trump got elected last time, Pelosi came out and says, look, Congress shifts and it'll be our turn next. Mm-hmm. Meaning, this is kind of like Russia firing Rezhnik and NATO looking at it saying, yeah, we think he's bluffing. It's that. Meaning they can see, okay, 8 million people didn't show up. They can see that the working class was lost. But from her point of view, Trump is going to be so bad that they'll come back to us. We don't really have to do anything. And so it hasn't been necessarily, I don't think it's been instantiated that it's a strategic loss. It's in the bricks. I don't think they fully grasp it because I think they think it is okay. This is typical American political back and forth, and it will swing back to us next time around. So we don't really have to do anything different than what we've been doing. Give me your take on that. I mean, do you think that's the way they're looking at it? Because from my point of view, that is exactly how they're looking at it.
I agree with you 1,000%. And as you were articulating that, that takes me to Minister Farrakhan during the at the lead up to the Iraq War, and he gave a speech at the National Press Club, and then he went from the National Press Club over to the Howard Inn, which was in existence at the time, and spoke to the black press. And he basically gave the same speech in both spaces. And one of the things that he said was, never underestimate the blindness that attends arrogance. He said, you're muted. He said, you don't see with your eyes. You see with a combination of your heart and your mind. And the arrogance is blinding you to the reality that is right in front of you. And he was warning George Bush, do not go into Iraq. He said, you can't win this with your technology. He said, after your first week, after the first 10 days, we know up to the first 10 days, you got this. He said, but eventually you're going to have to bring your soldiers in here. And when you bring your soldiers in here, these Muslims got something for you. And so I went through all that just to finish with the point that he was making. Never underestimate the blindness that attends arrogance. And that's what Nancy Pelosi was articulating then. And that is the controlling mindset that is dictating Democrat elite foolishness today. They just don't get it.
You have my full agreement on that. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's just really mind-blowing. But it's like you lose an election to that scale, and it doesn't bring a come to Jesus moment. It doesn't bring this kind of autopsy to figure out, okay, what went wrong. James Carville seems to be getting it on some level. He's like, I'm in the dark. I don't know what's going on. He says, I'm open to figuring out how did we lose this badly. But he is one of the few people that I've heard having this kind of come to Jesus moment. No, I agree with you.
Carville told him in July.
Yes, he did.
Joe's done. Go back and read the New York Times op-ed he wrote. Joe's done. Do not anoint Kamala. He said this process has to take place in the view of the public.
Right.
He said anointing her is exactly what Donald Trump wants us to do. We cannot fall into the, and us being them, not me. Mm-hmm. We cannot fall into that trap. He said, this has to be done in public. Don't do it in the back room. Let Americans see the process. He said, now how we do this, we got options.
Yeah.
None of them are good, but we have options.
Do you think Biden put a knife in the Democratic Party out of spite? And what I mean by that is, apparently the reporting, and reporting could be, hindsight type stuff. But the reporting was that Obama and Pelosi did not want Harris. They wanted to go through some kind of electoral process, even though they wanted to get rid of Joe Biden. So it's like, we need Joe Biden to step down, but we don't want Harris. We want to take it to some kind of primary in some kind of way. Biden comes out within an hour. I anoint Kamala Harris as my successor. I hope she does well, knowing full well, leading up to like a year leading up to that she polled worse and she was deeply disliked. And yet Joe Biden threw her out there anyway. I mean, is that spite? Is that loyalty? Where do you put that? I'm just curious.
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know because that's reporting. And so at the end of the day, I don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Y'all effed it up in Herculean proportions. Because I believe she could have won.
Agreed.
But so whether he did it out of spite, see, I'm not assigning this to you. I'm that to me is another. So your house is on fire, and you're standing in the driveway arguing with your wife about whether or not she picked up your shoes from the shoe shop while your house is on fire. It is utter idiocy.
Yeah.
To listen to Simone Sanders and Joe Scarborough talk about, well, you realize that she only lost by a percentage point, and you got your ass kicked.
Right. Yeah.
Stop it. You're
like,
laying on the canvas.
Yeah.
They knocked you the F out. And you're laying on the canvas as people are streaming to the exits on their way to the after party, and you're still laying on the canvas talking about, I could have beat him. I could have beat him.
You didn't beat me that bad.
You, Mike Tyson, you got knocked out.
Yeah. It's like,
it's
like he didn't beat her that bad. So it's like, it's not really a win because he didn't beat her by 2. Dude, it's a win.
It's a win.
Like,
okay. How many swing states did you win?
I know.
Oh, none. You didn't. No. Oh, how many Democratic enclaves did you lose? Well, let's see. You lost Michigan, and we can't figure out why black people in Michigan, why black men in Michigan did not turn. Not. I listened to this utter idiocy.
Yeah.
For about 15 minutes this morning.
Did you?
And they did not once mention policy.
Yeah. In fact, let's go to policy for a bit, and specifically in Syria, because you mentioned Syria, and I have been talking about the Syrian thing. I find it to be a big deal. From my point of view, all of these things are fronts in a global war. That even though they come across isolated, that they're not isolated. The protests in Georgia right now, where they're trying to do a Ukraine 2.0. Okay, well, that's backed by the same people who are backing the Syrian war, where all of these jihadists go and invade and attack Syria, or for that matter, the same people that are backing the Ukrainian war, or for that matter, the same people that are backing Taiwanese isolation against China. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like all of these things are fronts. If there was a larger, like a war direct, all of these places would be fronts. I was fascinated by Erdogan blowing off the Astana agreements, like just fully blowing them off. And then when he goes to talk about it, the lie is so over the top that it's one of those lies that indicate that the person is lying. Meaning, it's like, it's so bad and it's so ridiculous. Erdogan comes out and he says there has to be resolved in accordance to, quote, legitimate wishes of the Syrian people. And he continues, he says, our greatest wish is for Syria's territorial integrity and national unity to be preserved and for the conflict to end with consensus in line with the legitimate demands of the Syrian people. All right. Does Erdogan honestly believe that the guy who's chopping off the head of the Syrian army person is somehow indicative of the Syrian people? Or are these jihadists, terrorists, Al-Qaeda backed basically not Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda terrorists who's just changed their name. They keep changing their name into all of these different acronyms, but who changed their name and is effectively functioning in the same way as the terrorists did back in 2011. Meaning the moment that you have somebody chopping somebody's head off, you're not going to tell me that that's the will of the Syrian people who despises these terrorists who are invading and killing and murdering their countrymen. Give me your take on this. I like it's such a diluted view of what's happening that it's one of those things where it says, sometimes what you say says more about you than the thing that you're talking about. If it's that much of a contrast to reality itself, then I'm going to say Erdogan is lying through his teeth and he knows he's lying through his teeth. And this lie points to the fact that he's lying through his teeth. Give me your thoughts on this. I'm curious on your take on all of this. You could provide a larger context. You could just explain it however you want to explain it. You have room to do so. Give me your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I think that talking about the will of the people, President al-Assad got over 80% of the vote in the last election. So I thought that the Syrian people spoke fairly clearly in who they wanted to lead their country. I thought, and I've spoken, and I'm sure you've spoken to Dan Kovalik and some of the others that were election observers in Syria, who, despite the dominant narrative, that obviously that election was fixed, blah, blah, blah. No, the election observers that were on the ground, hence the word observer, said to me that it was a free and fair and clear election, and that President al-Assad won the election. Again, on Morning Joe this morning, they still love to throw in the disproven statement that he gassed his own people. Whitney Webb and a number of other very credible journalists who were on the ground have proven that was not true. That actually the white helmets are not the people on the white horses wearing the white hats coming to save the day. And as it relates to Erdogan, I'll ask this. Does he or does he not have American weapons on his soil? And I believe he has American nuclear weapons on his soil. To me, nothing else needs to be said. When you have American missiles based in your country, and I believe they are nuclear weapons, some of them are, you're going to go along with the program. You're bought and sold. You're in it till the end. So even though, he's on record talking about, well, we may have to send forces into Gaza to protect the Palestinians, ain't happening, because he's not going to do anything to jeopardize the position of favor that he believes he has with the United States. He may very well find that he's going to wind up going the same way as Muammar Gaddafi. He's going to, who tried to work with the United States, and we know how that ended up for him. It didn't work out for Saddam Hussein. Once Erdogan's usefulness is deemed to have been served, then he will go. His fate will be the same fate as many of those others that went before him.
See, I think Erdogan is more crafty than that. I think at one part he wants part of Syria, so he has plans. Basically, he has wants in this. In another sense, he is part of NATO, and so regardless of any sort of relationship that he may have with Vladimir Putin, because they weirdly enough seem to have a meeting of the mind on certain strategic objectives that they can work along with. By the same token, you can't trust them.
They who?
meaning Putin and Erdogan, because at the end of the day, Erdogan lied. He effectively broke the agreement with Putin and Iran. And so, and by the way, he's done this before. So he is not a trustworthy actor in this process. But I guess my point is he's not a trustworthy actor for his own political whims. Meaning, if there is something that he can get out of it, he will do whatever he needs to do in that process. Whatever agreement he made prior, be damned. And by the way, the same thing is going to be true with Europe. In the same way that Erdogan blackmailed Europe last time, saying, hey, I can let all these refugees through. Otherwise, you better give me a lot of money. And Europe ponied that money up because the politics of Europe had been destabilized as a direct result of that Syrian war. And so I agree with you that he falls in line more often than you would think he would, considering that they don't let him into the EU. They don't like him very much. And I would imagine that has some element of racism associated with it, just because, you know, it's a white world and he wants to break into it as a Muslim and as a person of color. He still falls in line. I mean, for God's sake, the Israelis, for all of this shaking the fists at Israel, not one jihadi head chopper went to fight Israel as they were murdering Muslims indiscriminately, despite the fact that they carry a banner calling themselves basically the real Muslims. I mean, give me a take on that. I mean, do you think it's, well, they're, I don't get the sense they were going the way of Gaddafi. If you remember, they tried to take him out in a coup once before, and it was Putin who gave him a heads up and, hey, you know they're trying to take you out in a coup, right? I don't know. It's, give me a take on that.
Well, I can't debate a thing you've said. Everything you've said is absolutely right. But I look at Saddam Hussein was the United States boy. He started a war with Iran at the behest of the United States. The chemicals that he used against Iran came from the United States. You've got the infamous picture of Saddam and what's his name, shaking hands and getting the check, Ronald Reagan's boy. So the only person or the only entity that is more untrustworthy than Erdogan is the United States. So everything you're saying is correct. Until the United States decides we don't need you anymore. And then the script gets flipped. And for me, and on the NATO point, you're right. He's in NATO. Isn't the United States in NATO? Isn't Germany a NATO country?
Yes, they are.
And who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
Apparently, 3 guys in a dinghy.
Well,
working in Ukraine.
Manny Moe and Jack. Right. Manny Moe and Jack, the Pep Boys. The Pep Boys went out in a dinghy. And so the NATO thing, the United States blew up Germany's pipeline.
Yep.
And where was the rest of NATO coming into the defense of Germany?
Nowhere.
So see, nowhere. That only works until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what I think we're seeing now is it is starting to unravel. I've never spoken to President Putin, but he strikes me as the kind of guy who says, fool me once, shame on me. You ain't ever gonna fool me again. I got a missile with your name on it. So because now you've got the Russian Air Force, I believe, that is coming to the defense of Syria. Now they're reporting that drones that are made in Ukraine are being used against Syria. Some of the weaponry, I believe, that was earmarked for Ukraine is now being used in Syria. the dynamics are shifting. And again, Erdogan is a useful idiot in from the perspective of the United States.
My point of view, all of them are. I mean, if Europe, I mean, look, man, Europe will be used as a proxy every bit as much as Ukraine is being used as a proxy if any kind of larger war takes place. And they, I swear, just walk right into it. I mean, when I was in Europe covering the parliamentary elections, and I'll let you go because I know we have time thing. But when I was in Europe covering the parliamentary elections, one of the things that I asked the people is like, do you see how U.S. policy adversely affects you? And they're saying, no, we don't see that at all. And you have all of these right-wing governments that are using immigration as one of their platforms because of the way immigration has affected some of the politics in Europe. Mm-hmm. And yet they're oblivious to it. I mean, when you have Angela Merkel saying, well, we can't take any more Syrians in because there's too many of them in. Okay, well, why are you taking Syrians in at all? Why do you have to do that? Like, they fundamentally miss how U.S. policy adversely affects their, let's say, local governments in these countries.
But that's the difference between the ruling elite and those they rule.
Agreed. 1,000% agreed. Mm-hmm. Dr. Wilmer, man, I always enjoy talking to you.
My pleasure. I got to run. All right.
Have a good one, man. Be safe. All right, Dr.